This would be part 5, the Dickie Scruggs, and dealing into 1994, being in 1994, after the hullabaloo about the New York Times subsequently released to every newspaper and every magazine all over the place, and up in Kentucky as well. And yet the tobacco industry, Wyatt, Terry and Co., just seemed to not know what was going on until late in November, and they began to pick up scent. And I think they were in California at the same time. But we flip over, and from the point that the documents were sent by Don Barrett to the library, or to, I guess, Satin Glance, and I think from that they had already begun to do work, a lot of it, for the AMA Journal of July 1995, and then later for Stanton Glance's book. But they had a pretty hard time, from what I understand, and so that's, I respect. I mean, it was out and it was out, and the people who were going to be the great, formidable leaders in the future had defined themselves as such, and that was fine for the time being. And I had to keep Louisville going, and my children returned from the one half of a year here, and I went, strangely enough. It was really tough, and I think the things that were most difficult were after my children left, but that starts into 1995, which is a new and a completely new era. It was an interesting discussion toward, I'd say, early November, possibly, of '95, where Dick Scruggs calls me up and says some things, but that's well into the next year, and so I'll skip that one and try to finish up with '94 on some kind of note of lucidity, or with the pragmatic idea that there is a beginning, a middle, and an end to everything, and even in this tape, I'm going to find it. So, where are we on our questioning? Do you have a question?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. It's about Dickie Scruggs. When did you first learn? I'm sorry. When did Scruggs and the Mississippi Boys disappear? Yes.
You mean in a
Were
sinkhole
you
or
promised
something?
protection?
Or a swimming pool?
Were you promised protection?
Well, yeah, I would have loved to have seen them all in the bottom of a swimming pool. The ones that I knew had totally abandoned me by. It was interesting to see terror in the eyes of Dickie Scruggs, and I always knew, there was, and even today I would see it. I think he was afraid, and for the first time, and he had been so blasé and so delightfully cool about the whole thing. All of a sudden, to realize that PIs were coming down on him, and he was looking for money. He was really looking for money, and when it comes down to desperation, it's going to be tough. I don't think he had a hard time after he had some evidence. Otherwise, he would have been up creek without a paddle. And suddenly, with the new flush of evidence out there, he had won his game. He totally won his game. He was where he wanted to be. He had maybe a lousy lawsuit to begin with, but he didn't know it. And the crux of things was when he had the ability to, say, "What, me worry? I don't need to worry. This is easy. I've already done my thing." I don't think he was smart enough to figure out where to send the documents, but certainly Stanton glanced the University library where it would be immunized after the Supreme Court decision, and eventually put on the web. Scruggs was feeling really good about himself. I was feeling really bad about myself. When I asked him, "Oh, I see a license plate over here with a Kansas City tag on it. Can you change my phone? Can you?" And all of these things, they just disappeared. I had a child, and she came down. This is early, but it's so delightfully characteristic of a man. Once he gets his hands on something, all of these promises just disappear, And so I said, "I've got a daughter who has to get to Louisville, and this is a 8-year-old daughter, and she needs to go to Louisville, and I'm afraid of leaving her here." This is an epitome of all of the dangers that were going on, lurking in the background, I thought. And he said, "Well, I just can't put myself in a position of being in the jurisdiction of Louisville, Kentucky, because it would just be bad for me." Well, I said, "Well, yeah, I understand, Dickie, and whatever Sam Dash, isn't he coming along sometime too?" "No." "Well, I don't know about that, Merrill, but nevertheless, I have to go. I have to catch the phone here. Where in the world in 1995 did he find another trip to Louisville in his Learjet, where, as I understand it, he goes and picks up the delightful entertainer Cyril, or whatever it is. He actually goes to Louisville, and he falls into the jurisdiction and quickly puts the jet on burnout quick. Let's go. And he breaks his word. What is this? It's convenient. This is a man who's fighting money problems, but when he got hold of the documents, that was the epitome of his. And he did so through Waxman, according to everything that he put out, and that was, I guess, legal. And certainly the courts made their decisions on this. And he cleverly puts into the hopper the Stanton glance through Don Barrett, through, I think the case was the Butler case in Mississippi. But these are all fascinating edges of my relationship with Scruggs. And so, anything else before we close?
Okay. When did Scruggs want you to? What did Scruggs want you to do? How often did you see him?
I didn't see him at all after that.
At the firm, you never saw him?
No, I was not really that popular. I was go away. As a matter of fact, I recall.
Was Scruggs afraid of you?
I said he was, but then again, I still have this memory of being isolated and not welcome there, except the time when he came. And I said, later on, it's just to be introduced in 1995 when he called me in and asked me questions
When
about
did private investigators come
in
in?
November of '94.
Was there international press coverage?
Yeah, there was there was a wonderful guy by the name of Peter Pringle who came in. I think it was in the summer, and then he came back, and there was a lot of coverage. I think the Brits and a lot of people who came in from international sources were more sympathetic and focused on me in 1994. And I was a little bit afraid of the British, but when I met Peter Pringle, who is an excellent writer and he does it all the time, so it's a profession. Um, uh, I was I was still a little edgy and on guard, and yet this was an extreme. Everyone I seemed to come across, from Myron Levin, an excellent journalist from the LA Times, and a guy from the Washington Post. I, they came down, and this basically was in 1994, and I I had both the interesting thing was Frontline, which was local in the United States, just became dizzied by a lot of different things. I think they may remain so because they stayed down here. They did a whole series for a couple of days, and there were a lot of it was confusing because the tape was buried somehow, because I think at that time Lowell Bergman became the coordinator for the big tobacco shootout, so to speak, and he forgot all about well, he was never interested in Louisville. He was more interested in what was going on down there. One of the interesting people who was, I don't know if he was associated with, but he had turned out an article with Bloomberg.
Was there press coverage in Mississippi?
No.
Why not?
None.
Why not?
None.
Nada?
No. As a matter of fact, it was verboten, and I never met anybody in press until maybe 1997, and then I met someone from the local paper here, and I said, "Well, you knew I was here. Why would you not cover any of this?" And then she said, "Well, I'm a friend of mine more, and I promised him I would not do anything." And it was sort of like, again, the leprosy, which was down here. I do know, I had to leave and go back and forth between Louisville, Kentucky, and Mississippi. And after '94, this became more apparent, because if I had not done what I did, I would not have been able to salvage my countersuit in Louisville, which was eventually settled. And that was a personal injury lawsuit. Judge Wine could have easily accepted a sanction on that, but I kept going back, and sometimes it was terribly frustrating and overwhelming, and I didn't for one moment enjoy this period. Nevertheless, there you have it, Dickie Scruggs, and the final part of Dickie Scruggs until we get to 1995, and we have a new lawsuit.